Hi everyone, I'm Megan, a bookseller at Literati Bookstore and the host for tonight's event. This evening we're pleased to welcome Betsy Bird to our At Home with Literati series in support of Long Road to the Circus. She will be in conversation with David Small. For our attendees, the chat is closed, but I'll be dropping links to purchase Long Road to the Circus from Literati throughout the event. You can also use the Q&A feature in your toolbar to submit questions at any time, and a selection of them will be asked at the conclusion of the event. A reminder that you can shop for more books in store at literatibookstore.com for curbside pickup and shipping to your home anywhere in the United States, and that we are also open for in-person shopping. And now allow me to introduce tonight's author and illustrator. Betsy Bird is the collection development manager of the Evanston Public Library and the former youth materials specialist of New York Public Library. Betsy reviews for CIRCUS, served on the 2007 Newbery Award Committee, and her children's literature blog, a Fuse No. 8 production, is hosted by School Library Journal. Her books include Funny Girl, an anthology of humorous stories, and the picture books Giant Dance Party and The Great Santa Stakeout. Betsy was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and now resides in Evanston, Illinois, with her husband and offspring. David Small won the Caldecott Medal in 2001 for So You Want to Be President and received 2 Caldecott Honor Awards. He is the author and illustrator of Imogen's Antlers, Ruby May Has Something to Say, and Stitches, a graphic novel memoir, which was a National Book Award finalist. He lives with his wife in Michigan in the very house in which Long Road to the Circus is set. Without further ado, I would turn it over to Betsy and David.
Thank you so much. Hi, David. How you doing?
Hey, Bets. I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
It's Friday though. Friday.
Yay.
Hooray. So I had an idea. I think today I was speaking to a bunch of school kids about this, and I felt like I should make a PowerPoint because I didn't make a PowerPoint for my first presentations for this book, but I decided I'd make one. I'm saying PowerPoint, it's Google Slides. My children make fun of me when I get the two confused. And I figured I'd do a little presentation on how this book came to be. And then I will hand it over to you, David, and you can talk about the art. And then we can have a little conversation about the book itself. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
All right.
I too am always confused by the use of the word slides.
Yeah.
Because I remember actual slides
Mm-hmm.
and how they sometimes burned up in the projector. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
Leonard Marcus, whenever he would come to New York Public Library, would insist on bringing his slide canister, and then he would use our slide machine, but our slide machine was so old that it would make this sound like the entire time, which drove him crazy. But he refused not to bring his slides. And then the projector was so awful that it would drop his slides down below and we'd find them later. And we had to get them back to him. So yeah, it is funny that we use the term slides for a technology that is so much better than that in some
I guess
way.
it's sort of like the word movies.
Yeah.
Which, makes no sense to modern viewers, I would think. But
No, well,
yeah,
they movie-ish. They move-ish. There you go. We should call them move-ishes. All right. I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. All right. There we are. And that's all there is to be said. The end. Wait, no. Okay. So I want to talk a little about how this book came to be. And it sort of begins with my family. So this is a picture of my great-grandfather, my great-grandmother. They're living in Berwick, Michigan. I don't know who that guy is. And that's their dog, whose name has been lost to history. And my great-grandfather here, he had a no good brother. I'm not sure if it was that guy who's standing on the far right. The guy on the far right seems to be pretty dapper. I'm not sure why he's so better dressed than my great-grandfather, but he is. We're going to pretend that's his brother, just for the sake of argument. Now,
I think that's good.
Thank you. I think so. Yeah, why not? He's the only guy present in the photo, after all. So there was a family story that used to go around in my family, and the story was that this no good brother would constantly skip out on his farm chores, which on a farm is not a good thing, and he would walk several miles to the home, and I have to say this in this way, of an elderly ex-circus performer. If I just say ex-circus performer. People are like, no, elderly ex-circus performer. For the sole purpose, we think, of trying to figure out how to train his own horses on the farm to do circus tricks. So this story had been in my family for a very long time. And then fast forward, my mom worked at the Athena bookstore, which is an independent bookstore, or was an independent bookstore in Kalamazoo until Barnes & Noble destroyed it. And she would occasionally do book events with you, David. And one day you happened to mention that you lived in the old Morantat house. And I think you mentioned a connection in some way to a woman whose name was Madame Morantat. And my mom heard this and she was like, wait, what? Because we have a weird family story involving a Madame Morantat. And she did a little digging and discovered this was an actual woman. There's the house in question. There's the house. And there's Madame Morantat with her tiny dog in tow. And, a formidable woman. And one that I have to explain to people, this woman was not merely an ex-circus performer, because she's a world record holder. Here you can see her. This is apparently a photo of her setting one of her world records, which is held to this day, which is riding a horse. And you'll notice her legs are on the same side of the horse. So she is riding the horse side saddle and jumping a wall that is 7 feet, 10¼ inches. There it says on the bottom, Mendon, Michigan. This world record has never been beaten. No one would be fool enough to try to ride a side saddle horse over this sort of thing. And I try to also, explain to the kids, like, this is side saddle. So this is her adopted daughter, who did not make the cut in our book, I'm afraid. But here she is, and you can see both her feet are on one side of the horse, and it's just such a precarious looking thing. The horse itself, one of its back feet looks like it's practically on point, which is just terrifying. This picture didn't come through, but here she is, even farther up. So she's lying down backwards. That man, that clown there, that's her husband. And so that's what we're dealing with here. This was side saddle. So she holds that record, but she holds another record as well, because Madame Morantat was a pretty big deal. She had her, she went on tour all over the world. She met the King of England. She had her own train car with, Ringling Brothers, the circus that she was a part of at that time. And her own train car had the name of her favorite horse, St. Patrick. Again, St. Patrick does not make the cut in this book. Sorry. Bonnie Ann, her other horse, is in our book. And here is what she is also known for. She holds the other world record, and it is for the longest distance of a horse and an ostrich pulling a cart together. And I like this photo partly because they were like, well, we can't show her at her actual age, so we'll turn her into a lovely young lady. Like, okay. She, as you can see, she was a woman of considerable age when this happened, but, all right. And as you can see, this is Bonnie Ann, and this is Gaucho. I had a woman earlier today who kept calling him Groucho, and I suddenly imagined him with like the mustache and the glasses, say the magic word. And I was like, I would love his name to have been Groucho. It was Gaucho. That was his name. Here he is again, next to Bonnie Ann, pulling her past all these people who are looking significantly unimpressed, I should say. And yeah, so I was sort of intrigued by this whole story. I was like, okay, well, it kind of occurred to me that we had the elements of a story here. And it took years for this to percolate in my brain. I just sort of vaguely thought about it. And I was like, oh, well, maybe something could come of this. I don't know. Oh, yeah. And I should say that Gaucho was quite notorious in the area. I've had a friend actually say to me that her grandfather would walk past the ostrich pasture where she kept, 18 ostriches. And they terrified him, and they would go at him, and he would take off running to get to school because he was so scared of the ostriches. This is a notice from the paper Madame Marantette of Mendon is home for the winter with her trained ostrich Gaucho. I don't know why that's in quotations. A notice appeared in the Mendon paper warning to the public to keep away from the pasture lot where Gaucho is kept, for the bird is in a vicious mood. I sort of took that as his personality point right there. He was apparently just a mean sucker. But all this sort of was percolating in my brain. And, you know, I thought to myself, I'm going to stop the share here. Well, wouldn't it be neat if I were to write a book about this? And since you, David, lived in a Marantette house, I thought, wouldn't it be neat if maybe what if David Small did the art? So my first thought was, well, that's a picture book, that is. I'll write a picture book. So I typed up a picture book and I sent it to my agent, who promptly forgot about it, and so did I. And years went by. Nothing happened, and I was doing other things and he was doing other things. And then a book expo happened, and see, if I had this prepared correctly, I'd be able to just pull it off. You're here somewhere, but you were promoting a book of yours, and it was your second graphic novel for adults, and I heard about this and I was like, oh, right, my book idea. And so I started poking my agent. I was like, Steven, read my book manuscript. And he's like, I lost it. And I was like, I'll resend it to you. And I resent it to him. And he read it. And he had done a job with your agent at the time, a different client of hers. And so he was more inclined. He was like, oh, okay, so I've done work with her. I can contact her and I'll send her the manuscript. And she did. And then, you know, I think they both had notes for me. And then I sent it on to you. And you invited me to your home, to the Marantette house, which was key because while there, you gave me a lovely tour of your house and your studio and your gardens. And we met with Holly Stevenson of the St. Joseph County Historical Society. And I can say her name so trippingly because Holly handed me this. And this is all the information on Madame Marantette that currently exists, as far as I know. Normally, when you are writing a work of historical fiction, you have to do backbreaking work to find the information. You need to, I would have had to have taken multiple trips to the area, to the Historical Society, dug through their files, looked online, but you know, what can you find online? And yet here is a packet of lovely information with every piece of info a person could need to learn about Madame Marantette, including like if you want to know what her grandparents did for a living, I've got that info. It's all here. And Holly just handed it to me, just like, here you go, because they had an exhibit on her 2 years before. How is that for lucky? And so they had all the information readily at hand. So we were coming back at one point, and this is how I remember it. You might remember it different, David. And I remember you telling me like you did not see it as a picture book, and you saw it as a novel. You said that, and you also said that I was concentrating too much on the uncle and not enough on the women in the book, which was also true. And well, you said it would be a novel, and I had never written a novel that had been published up until that point. And I was shocked. It was like, oh, like a book, like not a 32 page, not a 40 page.
Yeah,
like,
go climb Mount Everest in your underwear. Yeah.
you had such faith in me. That was what just clinched it. You were like, I believe you can do it. I was like, do ya? Because you never really read that much that I've written. So I could have fallen flat on the face. You don't even know. But I was determined at that point. I was like, well, I've got to do it now. And we wrote it as a book, like with chapters and everything. And, and then we went out and we tried to sell it, and by gum, we sold it. And what a shocker that was. And they said they were going to publish it, and then COVID hit. And that changed a lot.
Erased everything.
Yep, and that was when you made the bulk of the art, as I recall. It was
Mhm.
during the thick of COVID.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about making the art for the book?
Well, let's back up because just a bit because when you came to me, did you actually bring the manuscript for the picture book to me, or did you send it first?
I sent it first.
Yeah,
You'd seen
I
it.
read it, and I must say it was it didn't impress me as an apparent as a terribly original idea at that time. I don't remember what my criticism was, but people had been bringing me stories about Madame Morantet, the most famous person nobody ever heard of, for years.
Wait, seriously? This is
Hmm?
news. This is news to me. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you know, a guy at the gym handed me something that he'd worked on for a long time. It wasn't interesting. And I had been told that I should do something with Madame Morantet's story too, but I'm not a novelist. I'm not a writer. You know, I mean, I write occasionally, but the I didn't know enough about her. I'm not a researcher either. And I just didn't feel like I had the imagination to bring such a mysterious and interesting figure to life. Um, but, you know, she, even though nobody outside of Menden seems to have heard of her, um, she really is a legend in our little part of the world. And um, so, anyway, when I got your manuscript, it wasn't terribly exciting to me. But as we talked about the your story, I think, your personal connection to it, it grew in my mind that you know that if it was expanded into a novel form, it could work. But it's so easy to say, go write a novel. You know, it's like telling somebody to go eat a motorcycle, or or you know, bring me the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West,
Right.
and lo and behold, Betsy disappears and comes back. It seemed like 2 months later. It was probably a year.
It must have been a year because the only time I had time to write was when I went to Gilchrist, which was a retreat, to write, and I can't have done that more than twice in 1 year. So
Yeah, well, it was shortly thereafter. That's a good phrase.
there you go.
Um, you came back to me with a novel, and imagine my surprise to find out that it was a really good novel. Um,
That
I,
was lucky.
well, you know, I just couldn't reject it because there were really solid reasons for me to want to do this book. First of all, a story that fine so rarely comes along. Uh, and even though I had my doubts about how I would illustrate it, that's sort of common for me anyway, with any book. But to turn this one down would have been a really dumbass thing to do, I felt. So
I'm taking that pull quote, by the way. So.
put it right on the back of the book.
Put it right on the back of the book. There we go.
Secondly, my wife and I, Sarah and I, live in the Morantet homestead. And so the personal connection made it sort of irresistible. The connection, as it turned out, was a bit gauzier than any of us knew.
Which we found out when I visited you.
We found that out when you visited and when you spoke with Holly, who actually also lived in the Morantet house. She's the one who sold us. She used to, and never mind, this is getting into local.
That's fascinating, though. I'm sorry. That's interesting. Huh.
But Holly certainly knew more about the history of this whole thing than any of us. And but anyway, thirdly, the story was full of ostriches, and I thought ostriches would really be fun to draw. So I said yes. And there you have it. That's how this thing began from my side. And thank you, Betsy, for persisting, because you came through and you really did bring me the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West.
Can I tell you though something? When we found out that the connection of your house was more tenuous to Madame Miranda than we had originally thought, I was terrified. I was like, he's not going to want to do the book now. Oh my gosh, it's not what we thought it was. And so that was lucky.
But it's such a good story. Yeah, I must say, I was a little disappointed because my house is really quite fantastic. And,
it is.
And it would have been fun to include it. But when I found out I couldn't, so what? The ostriches remained. There was this, I should say, Menden, the village that Sarah and I live we live in the township on the river outside of Menden. And Menden, I think when we moved here, it had 1,500 people in it, or souls, as they say. And now it's dwindled to about 800, maybe less. So it's really a very, very small town. And even though this fantastic, internationally known circus star grew up here, made her home here, kept returning here, in the graveyard outside town, there is only a teeny weeny stone with it's not very well kept. It's very hard to find. And is there a picture of it there?
There is. It's somewhere in my notes.
Yeah.
I should have had it better lined up, but there is one photograph. Here it is. Okay, I think. No, that's of her husband. Come on, people.
Yeah.
Where's the one? Oh, yeah, I think, is it? Well, there is one for the family that's a little bigger. That's, I think, for the family.
That's the Peak family
That's
stone.
the Peak family.
Right, but then there are all these little tiny ones for the members of the family, and she is designated on the stone as Madame Miranda.
I think it's this.
There it
this
is.
one right, yeah, it's right here.
And it ain't
you
much.
Barely make it out on the Xerox, but yeah.
So I guess here is where we tell the actual story of her connection to that name. Back in the old days, the Mirandets were one of the principal landowners in this part of the country. They had thousands of acres, and the Mirandet homestead had been built by a Frenchman named Patrice Mirandet. And Madame Mirantet's actual name was Emma Peak, which doesn't really have a real exotic ring for a circus performer. And so, as the story goes, she married a young man from the Mirandet family, and 2 weeks later had the whole marriage annulled. And but with the proviso that she could keep the name. So from then on, she was always known as Madame Mirandet, and it was on her train car and so on. And even though a lot of people don't know how to pronounce Mirandet when they see it printed,
it looks like it should be Mirandet.
Well, that would be accurate, but what American is going to? I mean, what Mendenite is ever going to pronounce it?
Mirandet.
Yeah, they call it Mirandet.
Mirandet. Yeah.
Yeah, and also she is. I must say, I hope I don't offend anybody from Menden who might possibly be watching, but she was not very well liked, and she is still not very well looked upon in this town. I think the reasons are, A, she was a woman, B, she was strong and opinionated, forceful, and C, people around here still suffer from what is known as local-itis. That means anybody that lives here or grew up here, there's no possible way they could be famous. I mean, if they really were celebrities, what the hell are they doing living in Menden? So poor Madame Maranta. The gossip is that the only thing I ever heard about her when I first moved here, way over 30 years ago, was that she got on her horse with no clothes on and rode down the street naked, playing Lady Godiva. Holly says that never happened. She said if anybody ever did that, it was probably her. I thought it was her sister doing those side saddle demonstrations, but you said it was her daughter?
She had an adopted daughter.
Yeah.
And that would have been her adopted daughter. Yeah, who also joined the circus later. And that,
Yeah.
I kind of love that that's her personality.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I mean if that's the only thing they really want to remember about her, and it's not even true, that's small town gossip for you. And anyway, that's so I live in the Marantette homestead, but she never lived there. She just took the name, and
she may have visited it. It's possible.
She probably came in once or twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not part of our story.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I had visions of you drawing the house and then and the ostrich paddock behind that, and Holly just put the kibosh on that one so quick. She was like, "Nope, never happened." I was like, "Come on, man!" Oh, wrecking my dream.
I did drawings like that. I was all prepared.
Yeah.
I had the pasture picked out with the ostriches. Anyway, should we look at a little art here?
Yeah, let's look at some art.
I guess I have to share my screen, and then what do I do?
It gives you some options of things you can see. You would just select one of them, and then you could go to the art itself. There you go. It's big and huge on our end. So
is it huge?
It looks small to you, but it looks very big to us.
Yeah. Actually, let's skip ahead. We can come back to this when you do your reading.
Sure.
If this is the part you want to read.
Mm-hmm.
I've got some. Oh, I like this picture because here's Betsy's little heroine, Susie, and her best friend, whose name is.
Oh, ask me hard questions. Mimi.
Me? Mimi, yeah. Yeah, Mimi and Susie are Menden girls. Or Mimi's from Menden, Susie's from Burr Oak, another small town. Anyway, they're fooling around with Susie's hair in the library, and there's Madame Marantette actually in real life did perform 3 times for the King of England. She was in Europe, and the story goes, as far as I know, that she didn't go to the palace, but he came to her performances 3 times. He was so enthralled with her, and apparently gave her a peck on the cheek or something. So the girls are speculating in their minds in this picture as to whether it was a lip-to-lip kiss or just a peck on the cheek. And of course, I said it in the royal setting.
Well, and I love that she is the age that they know her to be now. They haven't tried to make her any younger.
She's in her 80s.
She's in her 80s. Like, because 80-year-olds do tricks all the time, right? Yeah.
I loved drawing Madame Marantette because my father's mother was so much like that woman, not only in her personality and her bearing. I mean, she wasn't a horsewoman, but she was quite a strong old lady. She used to mow her own lawn with one of those push mowers when she was 90 years old.
Yeah.
She always wore a brooch, high collars and brooches at the neck, and I don't know about puffy sleeves, but she was quite the lady. And when we were young, we were not allowed to call her grandma. We had to call her madam.
Oh, really?
Yes, madam. Yeah. So I was very familiar with this character on some level. And here she is having tea with Susie in her house. And Susie's very self-consciously trying to keep it together and mind her manners. Yeah, that's
Try not to take up too much space. Yeah.
not, yeah, exactly. And here is the train car that she used to ride. I think they parked it in Mendon on the permanently on one of the side tracks there by the depot. And then
Oh, really?
when the circus would come to town, they would just hitch her up and away they'd go.
Well,
Because
that's convenient.
there was a main railroad that came through Mendon in those days.
Well, that makes sense because I know that the train came through Baroque as well, and that's not that far down the road. So
Yeah, yeah. All this white space you see is left. I want to be a really interaction between the text and the pictures. So the the empty space in some of these pictures would be meant to hold the text.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's all I've got for now. I guess I could find more, but that's enough, I think.
Well, you mentioned me possibly doing a reading from the book, so
Yeah.
I'm more than well happy to do so. And as I was mentioning to you earlier, I've been having a hard time figuring out what to read. I haven't quite settled on my passage yet. Usually if I have picture books, it's very easy. And when I edited Funny Girl, there was one story by Shannon Hale I like to do. And this one, you suggested I do at the beginning. That makes sense. This is the very first, this is right above the chapter 1 on the first page. So I'll just read the first chapter or so here.
Cool.
There's not too much from it. So chapter 1, Long Road to the Circus. Strongest grip in a girl I ever saw, Daddy said, not without some pride. I looked down at my palms, rubbed raw where earlier I'd clung to the elm tree in our front yard with my no good, stinking brother Bill pulling on my leg to get me down. He'd called me in for mealtime, and I didn't want to jump to obey his words, so there'd been a good 5 minutes of yanking and gripping before Daddy put a stop to it. I still wasn't feeling anything in 4 of my fingers, but his praise was a cool, clear salve to those burning digits. A salve, that is, until Mama chimed in with, just like the day she was born. Once she said that, no amount of moaning on my part could derail her from telling the legend of baby Susie. And believe me, I'd tried. Changing the subject didn't amount to anything. Lying about our cow going into labor didn't do any good. Possibly because she wasn't pregnant at the time. Ignoring my petulance, Mama launched right in. On the day you were born, Lampi, you gave me more trouble than I'd ever had with your sister and brothers. This was no small thing. Mama had 3 kids before me, and according to her, each one had been a trial. I thought I knew all the ins and outs of birthing, but you gave me a real ride. You just didn't want to leave. You were holding on for dear life to keep from meeting the world. Then she began to laugh. My mama cannot talk about the day I was born without bursting into giggles. Granny says it's unseemly. That means whenever she gets to the hilarious part, Granny will totter over and start poking her with her cane, which only sets my mama off further. Get a hold of yourself, woman. Granny says, birthing babies is our war, and telling stories of it means telling about all the bloodshed and battles we overcame. Ain't no time for tittering like a school child. Then she'll poke me once with the cane and say, you don't see this one acting the fool when you tell that tale. I don't think it's much fair to get rammed in the head when I'm doing something she likes, but that's the way with Granny. Doing something right gets you one poke. Doing something wrong gets you a lot worse. Anyway, the reason I wasn't guffawing along with the rest of the family is because I've never found the story all that funny. And that's on account of how Mama ends the story. Finally, we get you out. And there you are, smaller than a coop's egg, this little tiny baby, all flailing limbs and wail and cry, looking half starved, which is not the way a baby should be. But quick as lightning, you latched on, started drinking on me from the get-go. That's when we knew you would do just fine. A pause. Except nothing, I interrupted, not eager to hear any more. And I ate everything you ever put in front of me and stayed small, and that's okay, the end. Except, she continued, like she hadn't heard me, when your granny came in to take you so I could rest, and truth be told, I was pretty tired as well, we tried to dislodge your tiny baby hands from my hair and clothes and discovered a grip we'd never encountered before. Strongest thing I've ever felt from something that small. Could be you just didn't try hard enough, Granny muttered to herself. Mama shrugged at that. I was plumb exhausted, I admit, she said. But the harder I tried, the harder you'd grip. Every single time, without fail, she'd start to laugh again, laughing at the remembrance of laughing. There's Granny, looming over me, trying to take baby Susie away, and I just couldn't get you loose. And then suddenly she snorted, which isn't ladylike, but at this point she didn't care. I'm laughing too hard to dislodge you. And then Granny gives it a try, Daddy continued, because by this time Mama was having a high old giggle fest and wasn't fit to talk, and she can't get you to let go either. I tried. Granny snapped, but as soon as you got one hand undone, the other one would snake up and grab whatever was in reach. She glared long and hard at me, like she was doing it on purpose. Not having anything to say to that, I said nothing. Now Daddy was laughing too, along with my siblings. Even Bill was laughing, but that's because he's a nasty toad of a brother. And that look on his face wasn't because he found the story funny, but because he found my finding the story not funny. Make sense? And then I tried to pull, Daddy said, and you just gripped your mama harder, and I thought we'd have to take scissors to the dress just to cut you off. And my hair, Mama cackled. Oh, they're a regular funny troupe, my family. I stood to leave, but Mama's hand shot out and grabbed me. And if there's any question of who I get my grip from in this family, they just need to feel that vise. You go nowhere. The thing is, she said, calming down slowly and looking at me with real love, I knew then that you were going to be one of my best and biggest problems right from the start. Knew it like I knew your pretty face. Because my girl's the kind who never lets go of something when she wants it. Never. Any fool can grip, Granny spat. It's the smart ones that know when to let go. Well, there you have it. My name is Susie Bowles, and I've never known when to let go a day of my life.
Excellent.
All right. Okay, you're right. The first chapter does work. Yay!
Yeah, and the drawings are all about the grip, the strength of the grip, the girl who won't let go. It presages everything that's going to happen in this book. And let me just show you the next work of art, which is from, I think, the following chapter.
Yeah, this is the next chapter, yeah.
Susie gets back at her brother, her
Bill.
I think we can safely say psychotic brother.
Yeah. Yeah, he's pretty psychotic.
Yeah.
He was toned down a lot for the final book. He used to be more psychotic. So.
Well, I think he's definitely a sociopath. That's
yeah. He's definitely a sociopath. Yeah.
But here Susie has waited for him up on the roof, and balancing one hand on the trellis, she reaches down as he's going by and grabs his ear, and she does not let go. So, chickens play a big part in my illustration.
Chickens played a surprisingly big role, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of, because you've got the ostrich, which is essentially just a very large chicken in terms of brains.
Right.
And then there's the comparison of the chickens to the women of Baroque.
The biddies.
The ladies, because the ladies, each one is named after a different kind of chicken. The copy editors had a field day with that one, let me tell you, because they were just like, what the heck? But yeah, what are their names? I have their names here. Wait a second. Here they are. Yeah, Mrs. Gura, Mrs. Rafus, Mrs. Faps. These are just different breeds of chickens. I just looked up different breeds of chickens and named them.
You didn't tell me that.
Yeah. I have here's your art right here. You can see a whole bunch of them gathered together. So yeah, the chicken, and then you have on your own accord put the chickens. You put at the beginning of the chapter, you have a group of chickens, which pairs so perfectly with the women when they appear a little later.
Yeah. Well, chickens. They're a good psychological comment. They're like, let's see, what did T.S. Eliot called that? The the objective correlative. They correlate with something else that's going on in the picture. Usually some kind of hysteria on the part of the participants, you know.
Well, and it was the only, so, you know, often with a book, you know, they keep the author and the illustrator very far apart. You're not allowed to communicate, but this was COVID and we were communicating back and forth like crazy. And at one point you said to me, I'd like to put some chickens at the beginning of this chapter. Can you write in some chickens? And I was like, writing in chickens, and the chickens got written in, and it worked perfectly with the chicken art that you did. And it was nice.
I remember that. That's pretty ballsy of an illustrator to tell the author what to put.
Right. It's a collaboration. It's the whole book's a collaboration between the both of us. So it makes perfect sense that you could say, let's throw some chickens in there. And I was like, you got it. Chickens are in.
Yeah.
They're not hard to add.
Yeah, people don't understand how unusual that is. You're right. Usually author and illustrator, they're just kept 2,000 miles apart. Never the twain shall meet. And everything goes through a bursar, through an editor.
Exactly. Emily Jenkins once spoke at my library, and she looked at the audience and she's like, I'm so excited. 3 of my illustrators of my books are here, and I've only met one of them before. And it just blew my mind. I was like, what? How can you not meet your, it just seemed odd. I'm in a weird position though. Every illustrated book I've done, I came in with the illustrator. So both of my picture books, I walked in with the illustrator, which you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to be like, hello, we've got a book we'd like to do. Right. And yet I've done it every time. So I don't learn well.
Well, also says something about your good taste.
Exactly. One of these days I'm going to get paired with a new illustrator. It's just going to blow my tiny mind. It's going to be, I'm not going to be able to deal with it. Yeah.
Well, you know, some authors are, how to say it, control freaks.
Yeah.
I was once given a manuscript by a very well-known writer of YA novels and picture books. She has since passed on, so I know this is not going to offend her. But her manuscript for a 32-page picture book came along with I don't remember how many pages of single-space typewritten instructions to the illustrator about what was to be in every picture and what it was to convey. And I turned it down, and that was basically the end of our friendship. Because I can't work that way. I have to have my own head and just be let go. If I really like a story, I'm going to find some good pictures in it. And I guess this person was just, you know, she just couldn't let go of the whatever, you know.
Yeah, I try to explain this to people. I'm like, look, there's a reason they separate, because the last thing you want is for the author to be peeking over the shoulder of the illustrator and being like, you're going to do it like that?
Yeah.
I never saw the teeth that way. I think that should change. Like, that's the worst. That sounds awful. You wouldn't want the illustrator like lurking behind you the entire time you're typing the original manuscript and be like, want to use that phrase?
More chickens.
That's later. I mean, if like when initially you're doing it. There's a big difference between when it's a final manuscript and when it's an early manuscript, I gotta say. But yeah. Well, and we've gotten looks like we've gotten some questions. It's about quarter two, and I guess
we've filled 45 minutes.
That's it's easy. We have a lot to talk about. We have more to talk about than we're even going to get to, probably.
That's right.
But yeah, okay. So let me read one of these here questions. Hey, Bets, can you tell us about your ostrich research? It's coming from Patricia. Yes, I can tell you about my ostrich research because we have a section in the book. And do you remember this, David? We have a section where Susie has written out by hand notes on ostrich. She's done her own ostrich research. Mm-hmm. And we thought maybe we'd see how my 10-year-old wrote. Or she wasn't 10 at the time. I think she was like 8 at the time. And so she wrote it out. And we were like, yeah, okay. yeah, it doesn't really work because there's a big difference between how an 8-year-old writes and how a 12-year-old writes, and Susie's 12-year-old. She would have written in a different kind of hand back then anyway, and it made sense. So you wrote it out in the final art. But the book that I got a lot of the Ostrich research from is a kid's book. It's part of this fantastic series called the Superpower Field Guide. It's only been 3 books in the whole series. It's by Rachel Polican. They're illustrated by Nicholas John Frith. And one's on eels, one's on beavers, and one's on ostriches. And the amount of information that this book has on ostriches is just amazing. This is where I learned that their brains are in fact smaller than their eyes. They're colossal orbs of telescopic vision, as they say. That they really will, and it has wonderful comparisons. Like, this is what your eye looks like, and this is what their eye looks like. And as you can see, it's very differently shaped. If they run across a lion, they will really run in circles and get eaten because they're not very smart. But yeah, and then it explains some of the more peculiar things, like the ankle is here, which you would not expect, and then that's the knee, and then this and these are just, this is the foot bone, which
that bit of information really, I went back and made some revisions on some of my ostrich anatomy. Just knowing that, I mean, I could draw a pretty good ostrich, like anyone.
You do a fine ostrich.
But just knowing that made me want to kind of revise. It made me understand the way they move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should say there is one element in this book I did not include because it was so complicated. And I also thought they wouldn't have known it back. I had to include information I thought they might have known back then. But the one thing they would not have known is how they breathe, which is the most peculiar thing I've ever seen, where they are simultaneously breathing in and out at the same time. And that's what allows them to run so fast. And there's this is the explanation of how they breathe. And it is, I have read this multiple times and I still do not understand it. I'm just like, I don't know.
Of course, you couldn't get that detailed in
exactly. And I don't think Susie would care. She's like, yeah, no, it's so strange. Madison has a question. How did you two originally meet? Oh man.
In my memory, we originally met when you were about 8 years old.
Yeah.
In John Rollins' bookstore, or the Athena, where your mom was.
It would have been in Athena because that's where Mom worked. So, yeah.
And I don't remember anything except a very silent, dark-haired girl lurking.
That's me. That is the best description of 8-year-old me I've ever heard. Yes. A lurking, dark-haired, silent child. Yes.
And circling in the background. And
yeah. I would never have gotten like within 2 feet of you. You did come to Parkwood Upjohn Elementary and do something in the library once when I was like in 4th grade. But I think I'd already seen you at the bookstore before then at that point. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
But you wouldn't know who I was.
I know who you were because I saw Reading Rainbow, and Reading Rainbow did Imogene's Antlers. So all my mom had to say was, that's the person who did Imogene's Antlers. And I was like, oh, okay. Everything filtered through Reading Rainbow at that point.
I heard about your mom. She was a great bookseller.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mom was really good. Yeah, it was a sad day when the Athena died, because that was a good bookstore. But they have a very other good bookstore there now. So
yeah. But your mom had a great memory for what people liked, and she could make suggestions. Mm-hmm. And, that's a good bookseller.
Yeah, she still can. If you want to email her anytime, feel free. She'll recommend stuff. She's happy to do so. Oh, let's see here. Okay. This one comes from Andy. I love David's illustrations and how he combines figures and detailed settings. How much of the work is digital and how much is old school ink on paper? And I wondered who were his influences. Was Pat Oliphant among them?
Interesting. Love Pat Oliphant. Can't say he was ever much of a... I think the people that he was influenced by influenced me more. And who would they be? Ronald Searle. time. I can't remember. Anyway, I have a lot of influences. I have so many, I can't sort them out. I have to tell you, I have done over 50 picture books in my life and 2 graphic novels. All of them were done by analog means with old pencils, pens, ink, on paper. This is the first book I have ever done completely digitally. During the COVID year, I took the time that I had so much time because all the publishers were sent home from their offices in New York. All those skyscrapers just drained of people. And everybody had to take up their computers and go home and learn to work and publish and make books in their apartments. And that took at least 3 months before I even heard back from my art director or the editor, maybe even more. So during that silence, I continued, I think, to sketch on Long Road to the Circus, but I also decided, well, this is time. It's time to do something I've always been curious about, and that is learn about digital art. And I got a great teacher who just showed me what I wanted to do when I needed to do it. He didn't give me a bunch of superfluous junk that, knowledge that I couldn't use immediately. And I really like the results. It's interesting that you're asking that question because it makes me feel proud that it's not. There are some very pretty obvious digital things going on, like the smoke coming out of that train. But I don't mind that. I don't know how to say this. I think digital art is amazing. The rapidity with which you can make changes is amazing. But I really would recommend 40 years of drawing and good old-fashioned pen and ink and watercolor and paper before you go into it. I know this is a futile thing to say. And if I was teaching, I can just hear the groans coming from the students in the class. Who is this old geezer telling us that we have to learn to draw? But to me, it's absolutely essential. So, but I'm having fun with digital art. Yeah. Did I answer all the questions?
I think so. Yeah, how much of the work is digital? How much is old school? Or your influences? Was part of it. So yeah, that's
the old school is never going to leave my fingers, but my new stuff is going to be digital.
Well, and I think I was saying to somebody the other day, I was like, I think it really helps that the technology has advanced as much as it has with the digital, because when the digital first came out, it just wasn't where it is now.
No.
And I really think it's caught up with where people need it to be to a certain extent.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some beautiful, beautiful things being done. But I think the best of it is the stuff that's done by people who know how to draw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think we kind of hit our time on the nose there. Well done.
Yeah, thank you so much to David and Betsy for joining us on At Home with Literati. A reminder to buy the book. The link is in the chat. And take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.